Since JJK Season 3 has ended with a masterclass from the legend himself, Yuta Goat Kotsu, a question that I've seen brewing on Twitter for the past couple days is just how Kashimo Hajime would have fared if he was the one in the Sendai colony instead of Yuta facing off against Drew, Ryo, or Ryu, I think, and Uru. And while this is an interesting question, it has rekindled the debate of who the top 5 strongest characters are in JJK. You know, by the end of the series, it's Gojo, Sukuna, Kenjaku, Yuta, and Yuki, in that order, by the way. Argue with your mom about it, not me. And I will say, I wouldn't argue with you too much if you switched Yuta and Yuki's spot, because it's just, you know, it's hard. They're up there, right? But the point being that Kashimo has got to be the strongest fraud of all time. He's like the strongest fraud of all time. You know, the performance that he put on in the series is not worthy of any of the glaze that he received outside of the series and continues to receive. And that's the thing, nobody in the actual series actually glazes Kashimo. It's just people in the real world, right? So in today's video, I want to call his title of being the strongest into question by looking at said performance. And as usual, I will be providing examples because you guys do care about that and I care about that too. I'll never make a video and not give you examples. Then I want to discuss what it truly means to be the strongest, right? And with all this preamble out the way, you know, as usual, thank you guys so much for the support. Please continue to do it. It really does help the channel out. You know, we've done a lot of growing in the past couple months already, right? You know, we're super close to getting monetized, got to keep going strong. We're going to get there, and we've got a whole lot more growing to do this year. So now let's get it done. So our first real introduction to Kashimo, I will admit, is one of the best and just the coldest in the Culling games. You know, he's depicted as someone who is always looking to run a fade at any point in time. So he's essentially like the Goku and Vegeta of the universe, right? So on paper, I understand why people are such big fans of him. He never runs. He has an electricity or lightning, I guess, based curse technique that can be used as a touch of death. And honestly, looking at him from this perspective, he would make a great candidate to be one of my own favorite characters, right? I love speed type characters who use lightning or electricity in creative ways, not to mention his curse technique essentially being a stat boost with other effects, and just the way that it covers him and transforms him and gives him like a cowling type of effect, right? I love things like that. I love those visual effect kind of stat boost techniques, right? But the main thing that prevents me from giving him the respect that people so clearly think he deserves is how he performs within the series itself. The fight against Akari is genuinely one of the best in the series, which does remind me, seeing just how well all the season 3 fights were done, with Megumi putting on a true masterclass against Reggie-Star, Yuji banging it out with Hiruma, and I don't even think anything I can say would do Yuta and Sendai justice. I'm genuinely looking forward to season 4 of JJK. Like, I can't wait for it next year to show up, right? But back to the fight. While I can admit that Hikari was a bad matchup for Kashimo because of his jackpot, essentially rendering his sure hit effects useless for as long as Hikari has jackpot activated, because Hikari can use RCT the whole time and just not die from him touching him. I don't think this should have been as close of a fight as it was. And to clarify, what I'm about to say is in no way to disrespect Hikari, because he is a heavy hitter in the JJK universe. Like, we know that. That's not something that's up for debate. Like, Hikari is very much a strong fighter. And fighting someone with automated constant RCT would be challenging for honestly any sorcerer in the series, probably except for Sukuna and Gojo, if we're being honest. But the main problem with the fight is that it was very much a back and forth between the both of them. Not to mention that Ryo, or Rio, I still don't know how his name's pronounced, we'll see when the dub comes out, who is from that same era, didn't exactly fare the best against Yuta, who was really the one doing the most against everyone in that 4-way fight. They were both revered as untouchable during their time, but the thing with Ryo, though, that makes me more forgiving of him and his performance is that he was fighting Yuta, who is at least a special grade, said to only be second to Satoru Gojo in the modern day. Yuta literally has everything. The copy technique, he has a Shikigami that's crazy powerful, he has RCT, he has damn near unlimited curse cursed energy reserves, more so than Gojo himself. So like the fight with Rio struggling against, or all of them struggling against Yuta, I'm not exactly mad about it, right? You know, because Yuta was holding back, if we're being honest, because he wanted the points. But by the end of the fight, even though they both put on a great exhibition of what straight hands looks like with cursed energy, akin to a fight we'd expect from somebody like Yuji, he was out of cursed energy. One thing that people use to slander Yuta to all hell is that he's the first character that we've seen throughout the series to actually run out of cursed energy. But when it comes to Kashimo, I never hear anybody bring it up. He ran out of cursed energy fighting against Hikari. And again, I know Hikari has unlimited cursed energy when he hits a jackpot. But still, if you're gonna use that to slander Yuta when he was fighting 3 special grade people, or, you know, I guess the cockroach is special grade. I'm not sure about the other 2. I think they're at least grade 1, but they're up there. If you're going to use that to slander Yuta, you gotta got to use that to slander Kashimo. And while it was indeed a last-ditch effort to kill Hikari, why all of his cursed energy reserves were expended, he was outplayed and could have died then and there, because he himself says Hikari could have killed him, and the only reason Hikari didn't is because Hikari needed his points, and, you know, he wanted another ally for the Culling Games, so something like that. But moving on to the real fight that makes me call Kashimo's strength into question is him pulling up on Sukuna once the Gojo fight was over. A weakened Sukuna, right? Kashimo intended to fight him, who at this point, Sukuna's cursed energy was low, his techniques were burnt out, and while I understand that sorcerers aren't supposed to fight fair, you know, there's no rule saying that sorcerers need to abide by fair ones, because it is, again, lovely dubbed Jumjutsu Kaisen. The whole reason you were reincarnated was because you wanted a worthy opponent. Why would you just settle for the scraps of the Gojo fight? Not to mention that the second Sukuna was fully reincarnated, Sukuna easily packed him up with his strongest form without even breaking a sweat. He busted out the mythical beast amber, whatever technique you want to call it. And something that people like to bring up is that Sukuna uses the world cutting slash twice against Kashimo, and I don't know if you know this, but Sukuna's a jujutsu nerd. Anything that comes to jujutsu sorcery, Sukuna's a nerd about it, right? He loves to learn. He just learned a new way to cut something, so of course he's going to use it. Plus, it's not like the first time that he used it against Kashimo exactly tanked it. He dodged it. He got out of the way. And while I get it's a world cutting slash, you're not supposed to tank that because he can't. He like, you saying that he used world cutting slash on Kashimo doesn't do anything for me, because I genuinely think Sukuna could have used a regular cleave and dismantle or an amped cleave and dismantle and still gotten the same results. He only used world cutting slash because he was bored. But the second slash, you know, which led to him being called the Waffle One, like let's be honest, that was for fun. Sukuna just was like, all right, let me see if I can make a net of world cutting slashes and see what you can do about it. And he became the Waffled One. I love that meme. But now let's get into the real problem with Kashimo and his representation of the trope of the strongest compared to Gojo and Sukuna for me, right? So the idea of being the strongest of any era is often described as to be so untouchable and unparalleled in power that the thought of losing or dying doesn't even cross your mind or the mind of anyone else at any point in time. And if we're going off of this definition, Kashimo already fails to do this or meet these standards because, for one, he'd already lost to Hikari before in the series in a fair fight, not a jumping, a fair 1v1. Not to mention that his technique, once used, literally kills him. That's Kashimo's whole bag. It's just like, if I can't beat you, nigga, fuck you, we both gonna die. That's Kashimo's whole thing. And during Gojo's lifetime, he was only threatened with the idea of death probably once. Like, it was only occurred to him once, and that in itself was caused by a man who was special grade level and defies fate. That's Toji's whole thing. He's the man who left all the cursed energy behind, so he's able to defy fate. That's why he was able to, you know, break the whole Tengen and the Six Eyes cycle, all that, or the Star Plasma Vessel cycle, right? And yes, before anybody says it, Toji and Maki are special grade level in terms of combat power, and even then it took, you know, Toji coming up with an elaborate plan to weaken him enough to attack him. And also, not to mention, this was a pre-awakened Gojo, so no RCT, no domain, and no limitless running constantly. The minute that two of these three things were a factor, he was killed. Toji was gone. He got hollow purpled and whole in his body, up. Couldn't do anything about it, right? And during the modern day, Gojo was so unrivaled that no one, whether sorcerer or cursed spirit, even thought to challenge him in a fair 1v1. And again, we all know that Gojo's birth in itself restructured the hierarchy of Jujutsu society. His birth caused the birth of stronger cursed spirits. We all know this. That is common knowledge. Gojo caused people to retire at the age of 6 years old. He caused sorcerers who are using their I guess bad sorcerers, I don't know, they don't really call them anything else, to retire at the age of 8 years old. That's how much of a problem Gojo was. That's how much of a problem the Six Eyes and the Limitless was. Again, a pre-awakened Gojo Satoru. No constant Limitless, no RCT, no domain. Nothing other than some Limitless and blue. No red. No red reversal. No purple. So I just want to put that out there. That is what it means to be the strongest of the modern era. Now, moving on to Sukuna, who, as much as I think Gojo is still stronger than him, I can't deny that he is the best representation of what it means to be the strongest in JJK. The only person to even remotely rival him, again, was Gojo, and after his death, any and everyone who was fighting Sukuna in Shinjuku were allowed to live because Sukuna was just curious about all the different ways that they would fight him with their techniques, right? Because Sukuna is a Jujutsu nerd. He wanted to see Higuruma's technique. He wanted to fight Rika and Yuta and see how they would go about fighting him. Among the other things like Kusakabe and Miguel and all those kind of people, right? The only person I'll say that he wasn't curious to fight was Yuji, because he genuinely just hates Yuji's existence. Like, Yuji existing makes Sukuna want to vomit, because again, you know what Kenjaku did to have Yuji. But the point being that these are characters that people didn't even think could be beaten like in a fair 1v1 until Majula was released, right? And we got a Yuji who had 68 years to grow and perfect his technique, and an alien that had a cursed technique so busted that the only thing I could really compare it to in terms of power is Yuki's Star Rage and Gojo's Infinity, because of how they manipulate space around them, and you know, him using light to do whatever he does, right? It's just such a broken thing. Kashimo was beaten the very first time he was thrown into a fight against a relevant character, and then went on to have the shortest time spent, other than like Ryo, but I guess the shortest 1v1 or real 1v1 against Sukuna, you know? And with stats like this, you don't get to call yourself the strongest at any point, to me, in my opinion. I'd even argue the reason he was able to call himself the strongest of his era is because he didn't fight Ryo. He didn't fight Ryo. Like, I remember Kenjaku pulled up on him, because I just reread these chapters for this video. Kenjaku came up and was like, yo, there's a dude out there saying he's the strongest. He ain't been rivaled at any point in time. And Kashimo was like, damn, bro, I'm about to die. Shit, let me kill myself. You know, reincarnate me, bro. I'm not fighting him right now. Not to mention, if your technique is a touch of death, you're kind of just knocked down, or just knocked off the list already, in my opinion, because that's like Soifone saying that she's the strongest character in Bleach just because she touches you twice in the same spot, right? If you put all your stats into speed and you just have a broken technique, that doesn't mean you're the strongest. Your technique's just really good. Like Gojo, we've seen this with Gojo. We always ask the question, or we even ask the question, are you the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo, or you're Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest? And the whole thing with Yuta using Gojo's body to fight off against Sukuna, using his domain, using the purple, using all his abilities and techniques, shows us that Gojo trained to be as strong as he was. Sukuna trained and learned to be as strong as he was. I ain't gonna lie, on paper, Cleave and Dismantle, they're just like, they're cool, they're okay abilities, but it's a fact of how they're applied by their users. That's what makes them so strong. Kashimo doesn't do anything special with his technique. I'm not denying the fact that Kashimo could be stronger, right? Maybe if he was around these types of people his entire life, right, he could have grown stronger and learned different applications of his technique, right? What it means to be the strongest in JJK is something that is respected. Characters who carry this weight are seen as the pinnacle of sorcery. Gojo and Sukuna were literally pushing every rule that was established throughout the series in their fight because they are just that far above everyone else. They didn't just learn sorcery, they started to evolve what you could do with sorcery. All Kashimo did was run fast and throw hands, right? The only thing really separating him from Yuji is the fact that he has a curse technique. And matter of fact, I would argue that Yuji in Shinjuku, after learning everything he did, could probably pack his ass up. I'm not end of series Yuji, I'm talking about the Yuji that fought Sukuna. Get Kashimo out of this conversation about him being the strongest. I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant right now. Kashimo is utterly the worst representation of the strongest trope in JJK to me, hands down flat. Dabura is a better representation of the strongest in JJK, and he fought Maharaga, who Gojo and Sukuna would have packed up. I'm just putting that out there, right? Dabura's not beating Gojo and Sukuna, by the way. I'm putting that out there for you. They both beat Maharaga. He didn't beat Maharaga. I'm not saying he can't, but he definitely did struggle against Maharaga. Was his first real fight? Yes. If Dabura was, again, similar to Kashimo, raised or grown somewhere where people was really throwing hands for real, I have no doubt that he could be stronger than he was. But that's the video. You know, if you made it this far, I do want to say thank you so much, and please continue again liking and subscribing, because our next goal that we're trying to hit by probably, I'm gonna say by the end of the month, is 1,500 subs, because I do want to hit 10k subs by the end of the year. So, you know, we gotta keep going, keep churning, keep pushing. And as usual, comment below what you guys think, you know, whether you agree or not. Maybe good down there, fry my ass, tell me how much, you know, Kashimo is the best character in JJK and how I'm just a hater and how I'm wrong and blah blah blah. But I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.